Welcome to the continuation of our series of short video interviews with our senior HR readership, where I ask, how are you preparing for a better future now? So we've kind of moved it on from before. Delighted today to say that we have 1 year on from, I think, when we last spoke, Sharon Doherty, who is the Chief People and Places Officer at Finastra. So good morning.
Well, great to see you again, Peter. We were just both talking about having got our vaccinations, so we're smiling a little bit more than perhaps a year ago, or at least feeling a little bit more certain about the future. So good to see you again, and of course, a big thanks for an invite back.
You're very welcome. Yeah, and the warmer weather helps as well, Sharon, doesn't it? So yeah. All right. So let's. I think obviously when we spoke last year, I think you were quite new into your role, Sharon. So so it's. I think what would be quite good is to sort of understand a little bit about a busy 12 months, as we all know, and really just a little recap from you and in terms of your role and what you've been doing at Finastra, and I guess really just share your sort of overall thoughts of the impact that it had on, I guess, you and Finastra and kind of the workplace, what it means going forward for the workplace.
And so I think for all of us, it's certainly been a busy 12 months if you're in a people and places team anywhere across the world. I was actually back in our HQ office in Paddington yesterday. We had a board meeting, and that was a strange experience. Hadn't been back in for 6 months, so partly with the board, some in person, some dialing in, and partly with the team. And the practicalities of it are, I think, still work in progress for all of us. Just to remind you, I work for Finastra. We're the #1 pure play software company in fintech. We've got 10,000 people, which is a reasonable scale for a software company, and we're across 40 countries. And what's interesting is during the last 12 months, we've been at different stages in different countries. So we're always seeing COVID at a different point. So right now, on the one hand, we've got Singapore, Beijing. We actually have Tel Aviv and UK, US that are in varying stages of feeling like they're pulling out of the dark tunnel. Now, of course, I'm sure there's going to be some twists and turns. And then on the other hand, we've got Canada that's just gone back into lockdown, lots of mainland Europe that are doing the same, and probably the place where we have most concerns is India. And what we're seeing there is at peak, we were getting 50 COVID cases reported, and that's tripled already. And I think we're going to see that get worse. And so you can just sort of feel the experience of COVID, almost a two-tier experience right now. I am sure, as I said, there will be more twists and turns. So we feel pretty confident here at the moment, I think, in the UK. But we hope that we're on the way up, and the variants and other things don't hit. So that little bit of backdrop about us. I think our view on the on the pandemic is that it is likely to be a K-shaped recovery. So there will be types of companies and regions that are able to pull away from where we are now and move significantly back into growth. And then, of course, there are industries and parts of the world where they may never recover, or it will take a long time to find a way of reinventing their business models. So we happen to be a software company in an industry that needs our solution. So personally, we're fortunate enough to be on the upward trend of that K. When we talked last time, I think I said there were 3 things that were important: the well-being of our people, helping our customers through this, and working within our communities. The reality is, that's such a good blueprint. It's carried on, and I think what's become clearer, I think probably for all of us across the world, as we've got our heads around this new future of work, has been the activities have become a strategy. I think. on the journey. We talk about the future of finance being open collaboration being really critical, and so the frame that we describe the future of work through is actually a BCG frame. Broadly, we look at open working for our employees, we look at open leaders to support our employees, and then we look at open business, so that sort of real digital first with a personal touch approach to working with our customers, and that frame really now has been what we've been experimenting with and industrializing, really, Peter.
Yeah. So this is your sort of open working, and it's just interesting how companies are taking, strategizing around it and then coming back with some really terrific ideas, which is, I love these interviews because we explore there's great learning, great sharing, great best practice. So tell us a little bit more then about, I guess, open working for you. What does it involve, and why is it important, I guess, for you and your employees? So what's it achieving there?
Yeah, so look, I mean, at the simplest level, our definition of open working for our employees is the hybrid model. Yeah, so 2+ days at home, 2+ days in the office, a reconfiguration of the office for collaboration. We also said there would be over 50% less global and even local travel. So we sort of talked about those types of things. I think some of the things that perhaps a little bit more interesting, because hybrid, I think, is pretty much what many have landed on. So we agreed to go hybrid, I'm going to say last July. Yeah, so when we sort of looked at our business model and where we thought the future was going, as a leadership team, we pretty much sort of said, okay, this is the future of work. COVID has brought the future forward. We believe our company is built for the future, and so we're going to lean in and move with the momentum rather than hold back. So last July we did that. We surveyed our people. 80% said they were enjoying working from home and would like sort of 2+ days post COVID. And then we created personas and we did experiments and worked with our people across the world to sort of try and figure out, well, what would it then look like in practice. And actually we declared open working as a way forward in December. So we were probably one of the sort of first companies to sort of speak to their 10,000 employees and say, after COVID, and for us, our definition is when most people in a country have been vaccinated, then this new way of working will kick in. So we were, as I said, pretty early, and we did that because I think people were feeling still quite anxious about COVID, as many still are. There was a lot of uncertainty, and our view was if we could create certainty, that took one thing off the table for people. And so our people have been able to think about childcare, think about where they live, and just have as I said, a more certain sense of how the future looks like for them, and the setup that they need to manage their way through that. So we've been on our journey to implement that. The components of it have been about, as I said, the office, the tools, and the culture. It was based on some principles that we did debate for quite a long time. 4 principles. First one was that we believed work and life were now going to be integrated going forward. Yeah. Second was we believed digital first. The third, which I think is a debate that different companies are having, we said we do believe in beehive collaboration. So we aren't a sort of anytime, anywhere. We said, no, we still value physical collaboration. So, 80% of our people are still within 90 minutes of a Finastra office at the end of all the changes that we've made, and we do want them back in. A lot of engineers, there's agile ceremonies, complex business problems, induction. The younger generation, want to be in the office, and we need other people to be there to coach and support them. So we took that decision. Plus, the 4th principle was about inclusion for all, and so that's really influenced all the decisions that we've made about the workplaces, the tools, and and what I would say, the cultural component of this is probably even more important than all of those other elements. And at the heart of it for us was this sense of trusting our employees, listening to them, and trying to create an environment that worked for us and for them. And so, we were pretty early out of the gates with a digital balance charter, which I know now very many people have got in place. Shorter meetings, focused time. June 21st, everybody gets a day off to, do anything but work. That sort of stuff that just sets the tone. We've had our location leaders have just done a wonderful job at, virtual drinks, kids events, yoga, all of the stuff that tries to replicate serendipity, sort of meeting people that you wouldn't normally be meeting, which has been, one of the issues that I think we've all found. Your world becomes smaller unless you do things to break people out. And then we've done some really nice policies that have set that tone. So I think we're probably the first company in the world to roll out what we call flex vacation. So it's no longer about statutory vacation. But you take the holiday that you need. So the likes of Netflix and LinkedIn have done it, but in the UK and the US, and we're a year into a 2-year change program to roll that out across the world, with this sense of, some of these things were designed for a different time. So, and if it works for the UK, how do we make it work for India and Manila and Paris and lots of other locations, and not be constrained by, by just the UK and the US, taking advantage of this. We've done, safe leave for domestic violence, enhanced bereavement. So all this sort of stuff that just, really sort of sets a tone and a culture. And we listen to our people, 25% of them every week. So we see this as the beginning of a journey of change in how we work. And they tell us what they like and need and don't like, and we just keep listening and iterating together, which, for us has worked really well, Peter.
Yeah, you've done a huge amount, as we said, in COVID is forced it to move very, very quickly. There's a few things you mentioned there I thought was quite interesting. I think when we first spoke, certainly this whole point about it was very personal to everyone, very individual, how people are going through this. So I think that point about the unknown and giving them some certainty, I think I really love that. And I think, but one of the challenges I think are, and I think you've touched on it slightly, is this: how do you make this hybrid system, this open networking? How do you how do you make it equitable and inclusive? I mean, that's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, how have you, because everyone's got different circumstances, and how do you make that fair? I mean,
yeah, so look, so one, you listen. Yeah, as I said, we're listening to 25% of our people all of the time. We also have, personalised numbers that they can call for different things, and that allows you to deal with individuals. Yeah, for sure they can talk to the HR or their line manager, but if they just want to sort of talk about specifics, then there's ways for them, particularly on some of the more sensitive things like domestic abuse. Yeah, I mean, we've set up ways, bereavement, for people to sort of say, hey, look, there's something going on and I need your help in a different way. And then, to be honest, the policies that we have set a tone. And then when you start working with an individual, then, your job is to try and do as much as you can to help them, particularly if they're in a difficult situation. So I think, that for us has been a good way of dealing with some of the more sensitive issues. I think when it sort of looks at, the patterns of work, does someone want to work 2 days, 5 days? I think, generally, that's why these principles are quite important. Yeah, to have. We've said we do value people being in the office. Yeah, so if you want to work for us once we're through COVID, then we want you in the office, not every day, but 2 days a week. Now, if it's 1 day 1 week and 3 days the next, or it's the spirit of it. So we've tried to listen. On the big things, go very personal. On the broader things, have principles with quite a lot of flexibility built in. And I think the spirit of that people have appreciated.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. I think what we did a debate recently, and it was around about employee experience and hybrid and how that might look, and I think those areas, a framework, policies to sort of balance those off, because it's got to be right for the businesses, it's got to be right for the employees' well-being piece as well. Okay, and so what sort of response have you had internally from your employees then?
Yeah, so look, I think like many of us, the EMPS results actually went up. Yeah, so people said we quite like what you're doing. The commentary that's gone along with that has pretty much sort of given us a thumbs up. We feel supported during COVID, confidence in the senior leadership team. So so far so good. And as I said, 80% of them said this was the model that they wanted. Yeah, which is sort of the best of both worlds. Yeah. And so mostly when you give people broadly what they want, they're pretty happy about what you've put in place. But what I wouldn't underestimate is that trying to get most people back into the offices, even when most people have been vaccinated, I think is going to be a change program. Yeah, for all sorts of reasons, ranging from I still have some anxieties about my health through to, I quite like the new pattern of working at home. It gives me, a lot of flexibility, and I like that. Through to I think I can be more productive. And it was very interesting for us all being in the office yesterday. We all felt less productive. Yeah, I mean, because you sort of really get into the drill of meetings, 45 minutes, sort of chance to do something else at home, and then into the next meeting, and suddenly we were reconnecting to the system. You were walking around, and so I think it's going to be it's going to be more of a change program for all of us than I think we're estimating right now.
Yeah, I think this whole point about coming back into the office and going back to what it was, we've got to be careful, haven't we? We've got to kind of take what we're trying to do here is taking all the kind of great things that kind of came from a very difficult situation and make them work, but not go back to the old ways. We want that new, better. And so really touched on that then, really. So the flexible working piece is being really well accepted, and that sounds mostly globally, but you're having a few countries with some kind of different responses to that. So that's interesting, and I guess going forward. So what about the other bit that obviously came up in the debate recently was, again, that piece about, you mentioned their productivity. Well, I think most people are finding productivity has gone very good. It's been very high, in fact, perhaps even more. So that sense of burnout, that worry of, that whole point about 24/7 being on all the time, how are you sort of approaching that?
Yeah, so firstly, talking about it, measuring it, and then putting policies in place that leaders lead. Yeah, and so I mean, we saw it fairly early on, and that's why we launched the Digital Balance Charter. Now, again, globally, we created a frame for that. Yeah, so we had these are the things that we would be expecting you to be putting in place, leaders. So shorter meetings, focus time, sensitivity. I mean, we're a global organization, so sensitivity of the time of day it is if you're in India versus if you're in Silicon Valley. So we sort of reminded people of some of those principles that we wanted them to live by. And then what we've done as leaders, we've sort of led from the front. So some leaders have then taken that and created their own sort of personal charters. My personal commitment is not to work at weekends, no emails, make sure taking holidays, doing all of these things. And so we're sort of forever on Yammer. I was at Legoland on the 12th of April in the UK, and selfie photo with me and my kid enjoying flex vacation. We've had people out with their dogs saying, I'm doing a meeting whilst walking my dog, all of this sort of stuff. So people see what you're talking about in practice, which of course is, this is good change management. And I think we've just sort of got to stay true to some of those principles, because I think the transition that we're going through with COVID is a massive change program.
Definitely. So this kind of, you framed it with open working, and then you touched on then open leadership. So everyone is kind of, so talk us a little bit, and you mentioned a little bit there, but strong leadership is obviously going to be required here. What about employee engagement? What about training and development? Where are you across that in terms of what are you doing in this area?
Yeah, so let's think about leaders. I think it's been a tough moment in history for leaders, because on the one hand, and we've all got personal experience as well. On the one hand, you're very, very early on, there was the anxiety about health, your own health, your family's health, and sort of trying to make sure that you're looking after things that are most precious to you, your unit, and so leaders have had to deal with that, and of course, it feels clearer now, but at the beginning, it absolutely wasn't. I mean, I think we just didn't know what we didn't know in the early days. So on the one hand, you've got that. On the other hand, you've got to think through the well-being of your people, and then third, as you talked about, you've got to figure out, how you manage productivity, because this wasn't for 3 weeks; it's going to probably be for 3 years, and so as a leader, you have a responsibility to sustain your business. So leaders have been in the middle of this. There's no playbook. There wasn't sort of something to take off the shelf that says if you do these 3 things, you've got it. You've got it nailed. And I think we've all sort of gone on our individual and collective journeys to try and figure it out. Now, it just so happened that as lockdown was happening, we had planned to train our 1,000 leaders. We had 62-day workshops planned across the world. And then sort of suddenly COVID started to hit, and we were like, what do we do? And so we took a decision that we were just going to pivot. And so in the April of 2020, we were training 1,000 leaders, or having conversations with 1,000 leaders, 60 workshops across regions about how they were feeling, how they were leading, and it was okay not to be okay. And so, what I'd love to say, I was really planned and I'd figured it all out, but it was just really lucky. Now, what we did learn was that was an amazing intervention, and it worked, because everyone was like, how can virtual training work? And we really early figured out it could, if you were clever in the design and how much time you put and all of that sort of stuff. We've repeated that this year, enhancing it further, because we'd learned things from the first time, and that's really helped. And I think there's been 3 things that we've done with our leaders. So firstly, there's been the whole sort of theme about being a leader in a virtual world. So that and some of that's been about the practical tips, some of that's been about leading change, and helping your people through that journey, and performance. How do you, so we've had a theme around that. The second theme that we've had is just about bringing them together as a community, so creating a network. Some of that's been the workshops, some of that's been lunch and learn, some of that's about social media groups where they can share tips and connect with each other, and I think that's helped. And then the third theme has been about building resilience, and I think as we've gone on, because of as I said, it's more like a 3-year journey that we're on, not even a 3 month. Then what we found is leaders' resilience, but also their ability to enable resilience within the organisation, really important. We partnered with Mind, who I think many of us have relationships with, very, very, very good. Done masterclasses on resilience, and really we have a message which is it's okay not to be okay, and we've done some very, very powerful work, again led from the top, talking about how people feel when they're not in control of everything, and this has just sort of helped and created a leadership cadre that feel trained, supported, and able to talk about the things that they don't understand or need support on. And, you know, ultimately there's 7 leaders at the top of Finastra, and we've got 1,000 leaders across the business. So we are only going to be as powerful as the enablement that we put in place for those 1,000 leaders. So we've tried really hard to cascade the support so that our leaders have what they need to do the job that we need them to do day in, day out.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? The timing of that, as you rightly say, probably in a way, which you were able to really jump on it as it was happening, wasn't it? Which probably, so you're all kind of together going through it. So it's probably been, very, very good for you in terms of that respect. But and then the last bit we touched on it last time, Sharon, as well, because I think the one thing I really like about what's gone on post-COVID is purpose. I just love that, the fact that we're seeing many companies had purpose before, some didn't, so tell us again, I know you're doing some great things, but tell us what I think you class it as open business, I think, again. So tell us a little bit work about work you're doing there with I guess your customers and wider community.
So I think there's probably 2 parts to this. One is the more commercial part of it, which is, we're a software company. We were pretty agile anyway. We were pretty future focused, but, all of us had to take all of our people home within 3 to 5 days. And I think, in different ways across the world, everybody did that. Some better, some some with some hiccups. I'm sure. And I think what we've seen from a pure business point of view is that pretty much our business pivoted to 100% digital. Now, as I said, as a software company, that was possible for us. So what we found is, marketing our Finastra Universe events, higher attendance than we've ever seen. Our engineers are pretty much as productive as they were when they were in offices. The thing that I find amazing is our we implement software. Much of what we do is with enterprise software, and we that pivot to 100% implementation remotely. I don't think anybody thought that was possible, and yet we did, and we didn't miss a heartbeat. And actually, we had a 10% increase in the implementations that we've done. So I think that just completely changed our mindset about what was possible. And then I think what's been really interesting as we've worked with customers, we see this as a model that will sustain, and not just because we want it to sustain, because we see it's effective and efficient and it's good for the planet, and our people enjoy having more time and not having to leave their families and travel the world. So we've seen all that, but of course there's been such a common experience that mostly our customers have been going through a similar thing, and they're now thinking, well, our people are traveling less, so if everybody's people's traveling less, that can work. And we're going to be socially distancing for quite a long time, so I'm not sure we want your people in our offices, because that then means we have to, so what we're seeing, and of course it is different in different parts of the world, is that for sure we are, but that's being reciprocated, that our customers want to move to a digital first motion, because all the benefits that we can see is what they can, and it's forcing innovation. I was in the board meeting yesterday. There was a lovely tool shared that our sales team now use, that it's a 3D workflow showing a customer, if they're lending, what the current process is and then what the future one is. Now, in the old days, 3 people would have got on a plane, piled into a meeting, loads of PowerPoint, and so companies are saying, well, what can we do that is more engaging, more, how do we use the power of technology for good to engage and inspire customers to do things differently? And the feedback's fantastic. Customers love it. And so I think there's lots of micro innovations going on that are making this new way of working, something that I think will be sustainable. When I then look at, the work that we're doing within our communities, which I should actually be called the People, Places and Purpose Officer, because I'm fortunate enough to also have that agenda under my remit, then it's just been a fantastic sort of year for us in the work that we've been doing. So on the one hand, there's been some really powerful work on financial inclusion, which we're a fintech, we're in financial services, and probably the most powerful work we did was with the US government, where they were trying to allocate trillions of dollars to businesses, and they couldn't get the money to small businesses. In weeks, not months, we pivoted our software and were able to get over 100,000 small businesses access to loans, which affects millions of people. But then what we found out from that was that some of the excluded communities, so particularly African American, Latinx, etc., some of the Asian communities, loans weren't getting them. So that's spun up a whole load of work with other large companies, with the US government, to try and improve that. So a ton of work there. Social equality has been another important area for us, and actually for International Women's Day we launched a point of view on AI bias, and actually said in financial services, if unchecked, this could perhaps be one of the biggest negative contributors to inequality in our lifetime, because of course it industrializes inequality. So we took a position on that. We took a position from our products and services point of view, but started a dialogue within financial services about that, which was really nice. And then I think, like many others, you can't help but see the amount of negative impact we are having on the planet. We not only, like many are, declared carbon neutral by 2030, but the real power for us is working with our customers to help them. And we've got lots and lots of examples now of course we digitize what customers do that just has a fantastic impact on reducing carbon. So a lot of good work that I think has really just been confirmed as adding even more value than we thought it could in the context of COVID. I think none of us really understood how this was going to play out. But I think what you definitely see in the current climate is some people are going to be able to navigate their way through this, companies and individuals, and there are many in society that this will have a very significant negative impact. And my view is it's incumbent upon us as individuals, companies, and of course governments to really sort of figure out how COVID doesn't become an even bigger driver of inequality in society. So so lots of food for thought, Peter. Really a sort of pleasure again to get a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sharon. We've covered a stack of content there, haven't we? Really interesting topic. So really fascinating to see what you're doing. Some tremendous work there you're doing. So no, thanks again. And we'll catch up, well, maybe a year on, but I'm sure we'll catch up. All right. Thanks, Sharon.
Listen, you take care, Peter.
Bye.
All the best.